Good. All right, we should be recording. Okay, welcome everybody. We are going to get started since it's the top of the hour and I want to honor everybody's time. This is April 17th, 2019. Case collaboration, powerful questioning and direct communication with adults, and we are being recorded. My name is Christine Shiverick and I'm the program's chair for the ACO Programs Committee, and I welcome you all today and thank you so much. If you've had trouble getting on and getting links, I just want to say thank you very much for your patience while the higher powers work out the new kinks on in the new website. So with that, I am going to try to figure out how to advance my computer. Oh, there we go. Okay. Just some quick announcements that our May case collaboration will be managing progress and defining accountability with our clients. June's case collaboration will be helping our clients create new awareness to achieve results. And we invite you all to participate in those case collaborations as well. Before we get started, I just have a couple of quick kind of housekeeping I guess measures to go through. Our goals are participation and sound. So I'm going to ask everybody to please mute your line if you are not currently talking. You can do that by dropping your mouse down to the bottom. A bar will come up. In that lower left-hand corner, you will find a microphone, and you can click on that to mute and unmute yourself. While you're down there, you also have the ability to turn your video camera on and off. And then further down on that bar, you have the ability to manage your participation. If you click on that, sorry, go ahead. Okay, so if you click on that, you'll see your picture come up on the side of your computer screen, and you'll be able to see whether you're muted or unmuted that way. You'll also be able to raise your hand to participate. So in order to get good sound quality for our recording, if we could stay on mute until you want to share something, that would be great. And then either go ahead and raise your hand and or type in the chat box, and we're going to do our very best to manage and monitor that. If you are on the phone, to mute and unmute yourself is *6. So if you're calling in from the phone, go ahead and mute and unmute yourself by *6. If you want to raise your hand to join into the conversation, you're going to use *9 to raise and lower your hand. So our opening word today is reveal, R-E-V-E-A-L. You can send that with the closing word to cceu@adhdcoaches.org, cceu@adhdcoaches.org. And a quick update, we did get ICF approval. I believe January's CCEUs went out. We are going to have to resend those. So I'm going to ask you to tear up those or delete that one that you already received. The new one will come with a 0.5 core competency and a 0.5 resource for reference information, tools, and personal development. We have 2 other topics that also qualified for that. And then every other topic that we do will be a full CCEU, a core competency CCEU. So I apologize. I know people are waiting for those. I've had a family emergency that we've had to deal with for quite a while. So I thank everybody for their patience, and we are working incredibly hard to get those out to you. So the new January will come, February and March will all be coming shortly. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Peter.
You're on mute.
Sorry.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm Pete Resch. I'll be sharing the facilitating duties with Kat Janke. We're thrilled to lead this discussion on an obviously huge topic in coaching, powerful questioning, and direct communication. Next slide. We decided a few months back to break this up into two parts for adults and students, because obviously they are very different types of people. Last month, we had a really great conversation about powerful questioning and direct communication with students. And now we are excited to explore powerful questioning and direct communication with adults today. So with that, next slide, I'll hand it to Kat for the next few slides.
Okay, can you hear me fine? So this slide you're looking at is your ICF core competency around communicating effectively, as you can see. And we're going to talk about powerful questioning and the direct communication. But always remember that active listening, which is number 5, is always the precursor to both of these. So it's playing very much in there. So let's just start with our number 6 with the powerful questioning. As you guys scan through what the ICF core competency is on powerful questioning, maybe what stands out to you. Anybody? Anybody?
Kat, I know we have a hand raised. I'm just trying to, it's a phone number, and I'm just trying to, I can't see the, sorry.
Yeah, it's me, it's Nancy Rady. Can someone actually send me the Zoom link? For some reason, I wasn't able to get that.
Okay. I cannot, I cannot, because I'm in the process of controlling this screen.
Oh, okay.
Should I forward the one you gave me?
Yep, that would
Christine?
be great. Yes, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Nancy, what's your email?
Nancy at NancyRatey.com. Thank you.
Yep. And again, I apologize. There's something wrong with the website and it's not syncing. So I apologize. We will get that up and fixed. So I'm sorry. I know, Kat, you wanted some group participation around what was standing out kind of with that communicating, that core competency around communicating effectively, specifically with that powerful questioning.
Yeah.
This is Robin. I raised my hand, but I don't know if you can see it.
Yep, I can see you now, Robin.
Okay. So one thing I think about is what Kat had said earlier about active listening and having a curious mind and being curious about everything you hear so that you can ask questions about what's not included or what hasn't been revealed in what they're sharing for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that a lot. And so when I catch that, that's what guides my questions, is what am I not hearing and what can I clarify about what I am hearing.
I love that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Let me see. Nancy, did you have your hand raised again?
No, thank you.
Okay, perfect.
Nancy, I sent that email.
Oh my God, thank you so much.
This is Faith. One of the things I think about with powerful questioning is if you really hit on a powerful question for the client, there'll often be a pause, or they'll say, that's a good question, and then there's a pause.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. Can you, Christine, can you go to the next slide? Because we're talking about this anyway. question.
I just wanted to, Melanie had written in the chat, she said in her second coaching class ever, her teacher did a demonstration of coaching using only, in quotes, powerful questions, and that has stuck with her ever since. So yeah, that would be fascinating to watch.
Yeah, and that's interesting because I took some stuff from my coach training manual, my CTI, and one of the things they mentioned in it, you could spend a whole coaching session doing nothing but using powerful questioning and having a very effective coaching session. So, yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So we're talking about the powerful questioning. What comes to mind when you consider this topic in terms of powerful questions? So I could like start off with something saying open-ended questions. Powerful questions are open-ended questions that are going to send this client into this realm of discovery that'll get them started. So an open-ended question being not a yes or no. It's just, open it up to them to start thinking. And what Melanie was saying, to have that pause where they're really thinking about what you just asked them.
Okay, Ruth, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Sorry, I've got a bad cold, so I'm not feeling completely here. When I think about powerful questions, when I was first learning about powerful questions, I was told to avoid starting questions with the word why. And I noticed how often that was my intuitive, a question starts with why, right? More. And so when I was really working on trying to internalize great, powerful questions, I worked really hard on figuring out how to say a question starting with the word what instead of why. And for me, it was a really great shortcut for just trying to internalize the mindset. So instead of saying, so why didn't you do that task you said you were going to do, or the thing you said you would do this past week? But instead saying, so what do you feel got in the way of your not being able to do that this week? It sounds so much less judgmental, and it seems that the person then is much more likely to say, oh, that's not necessarily a bad thing that happened. There's something I can learn from the fact that I didn't get that done, as opposed to a judgment like, how come you couldn't possibly do that, even though you said you were going to do it? So I still, to this day, when I'm trying to think of a good powerful question, I think to myself, start with what? And oftentimes that helps me go in the right direction.
I love that. And I love that when I work with parents, I always talk to them about that so that they are able to have a conversation with their child without that judgment piece. And they're all always so amazed that, because it's so natural for us just to say why. Yeah. And that's an awesome point.
And one of the why question, the explanation for the why question too was, it invites the client to look for explanations or analysis, and they feel a need to justify a decision or viewpoint at that point. So we've kind of put them on defense. So yeah, awesome, Ruth, because that's a big one right there.
Yeah. Anybody else? I know we had a couple more hands raised, but I don't see them right now. So I want to make sure I don't miss anybody.
One of the things that I tell clients about why, and to help them when they're asking themselves questions, is that why tends to be more of a therapy question, digging deep, why did this happen? And that for coaching purposes, we're really only looking into the past if we need to find out a pattern that a client wants to build on or change. And so, I'll say that's a therapy type question, great in therapy, but we don't use it so much in coaching. And I find that clients come back to me and say, yeah, okay, I got that. And now when I hear myself asking myself why, I'm switching it to what's getting in my way, or what would help me move forward. And so I think it can be very helpful in a lot of ways. I mean, I agree. I keep that in mind a lot too.
Yes, absolutely. Robin, did you have something to add?
Well, I was just thinking about how important it is for me to remind myself that you're not asking what, or why in order to fill in the gaps for you, for my understanding, but to help them fill in the gaps for their understanding.
Yeah, very nice. Very nice.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah. And what other aspects might be included, such as like, someone brought it up already about allowing the client time to reflect on this powerful question and respond, so they have more of a thoughtful discovery process going on. So there's that, just being quiet and letting them ponder that powerful question.
So Kat, are you asking like what else is part of that powerful questioning?
Yeah, like what other aspects might be included in powerful question that we left out?
Okay. And Kay has her hand raised.
Yeah, I'm thinking as we're talking about this, that oftentimes even saying what got in the way does not get an answer. It's kind of like, well, I don't know. But again, I think the pause is really, really helpful for that. And then sometimes, well, is that something you'd like to explore, especially with adults, because maybe that's a place to go with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then I think, Robin, did you raise your hand again?
There. Also, it's not about questioning based on what's going on in their head, but it's about questioning around what you're observing with their body language, maybe the tone in their voice, how they're responding, and asking permission to reflect back if you're seeing something that they may not be aware of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Nancy, go ahead. You can unmute and Nancy?
Okay, there. Gosh, I unmuted.
Yep.
Yeah. I heard a quote lately by Peter Drucker, and it says the most important thing in communication is to hear what isn't being said. And so that brings to mind, not only curiosity that was, someone said earlier, but also silence, and I think that that's different than pausing, but it's, kind of listening to the silence. But I don't know that I'm explaining exactly what I'm trying to say, but it's kind of listening beyond the words, trying to figure out if the person is talking, whether they're trying to hook you with a story or not, allowing enough time for them to kind of talk themselves into a circle, and then just being okay with silence at times.
Yeah.
And I would say, you guys hang on to what she just said, because we're going to have another slide that'll delve into just exactly what she just brought up. And that's a very good point.
Yes, you guys are really stealing my thunder.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
You're going to have to hold on for 1 second because Dale said to sent a message saying, "Great question, Kay. Is that something you'd like to explore?" So
Sorry. That's a powerful question.
Exactly.
Let's roll to the next slide.
Okay.
And I think, PC, yeah, these are the markers. So you guys used this the last time collaboration call, but for those who aren't aware, these PCC markers are assessment markers that an assessor would use, and they're trained to listen to determine which ICF core competencies are in evidence, when they're listening to a coaching conversation. So these are big markers too. To you guys, looking at these now, what stands out to you when you look at the ICF PCC markers for powerful questioning?
Well, I think, Ted, I'm going to jump in. I think that so often, especially when we're in a kind of that exam type of scenario, that number 5, we probably sometimes we don't allow that we don't present them at a pace that allows for that thinking and reflection by the client. I think sometimes when we're all kind of, you know, nervous that we have, you know, something's being recorded for you know, other purposes that we don't pace. I think that word pace is a really good word to make sure that we're pacing the questions in a way that, as Peter's going to talk about, gives that room for pause and contemplation.
Yeah, and I don't know about you guys, but number 7 for me is always something I have to pay attention to, because to try not to lead the questioning to where I want it to go, to my conclusion or direction, right? But let the client take us there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Nancy, did you still have your hand raised?
Nope, sorry.
Okay, no, you're totally fine.
Yeah, this is new to me. Sorry,
Yep.
let me undo it. Okay, sorry.
You're totally good. Oh, I love it. I love it.
Okay, well, I'll move on, but this is this slide is a powerful thing for all of us to have, just to know, you know, those components, those ICF components in here. So let's move on to Pete's slide.
Okay.
Okay, I am unmuted. The power of pause. We've already talked about this, so we can just move on. No. So I just wanted to say a couple of things I thought about. So slide 7, review of core competency, active listening, powerful questioning, and direct communication. So we'll be moving on in the next slides to direct communication. I was thinking this is kind of the in-between questioning and direct communication. In a way, one might think of it as we ask powerful questions, we pause for the answer and use silence if need be. Then we may have to use direct communication. So I guess my question is how comments on how people feel about silence. And I don't feel good about it, so I want someone to answer. How do people feel about silence with their client? Is that hard for you?
I like silence personally. Sometimes I see the client uncomfortable with it, but then I think that opens up another line of conversation. The only time it's hard is when I'm not sure that I've been disconnected. If I'm not seeing my client face to face. So every once in a while, I'll give them about 30 seconds or so of silence, but then I kind of do a quick check-in to make sure, if we're coaching on the phone, to make sure that we're still connected. And I haven't lost them. Go ahead, Robin, I see your hand raised.
I was just thinking that silence was very uncomfortable for me in the beginning of coaching because I was nervous, maybe worried about where the coaching was going. But what helped me create the shift was when I heard silence, it reminded me to start paying attention to everything else instead of just the words.
Excellent.
Yeah, I love that.
Now, Faith said in our last the call in March, I really love this. She'll say to the client, "Take your time. I will sit here with my eyes closed so you don't feel pressure," which I love. So the idea of allowing time. We also mentioned.
Could I add one more thing to that, please? And thanks
Yes.
for remembering, because then I'll have to mute myself. I'll be driving the rest of the call.
Please.
Another thing I do is if a client seems really stuck, I'll sometimes ask, would you like some help feeling more centered or more grounded, or I might ask them what word they use. And very often they'll say yes, especially in the early days of coaching together. And then I'll talk them through some sort of very simple breathing or visualization or something, or a grounding technique that will help them go back inside themselves. And again, that's a thing people can then take out of the coaching and use in other places. But I find that a very nice add-on to what I do, you know, when clients are okay just going into themselves.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and Peter, I'm going to jump in for just a minute because Faith and Melanie are on the same wavelength. In the chat, she said the best way to practice getting used to silence is through group meditations, you know, sittings with open sharing at the end. Get practice watching the urge to speak. So kind of doing, like exactly what Faith said, doing some of that kind of silent work. Is also a good way to get used to that, just that quietness, right? Because I think for a lot of our clients, you know, if they're not physically restless, they're mentally restless. So they probably haven't had those opportunities for that quiet.
Right. Perfect. The other thing that we, well, go ahead.
I would add, some of these guys also have these processing speed challenges or work. So we're actually granting them something that other people don't give them the opportunity because we're so fast. So what a great opportunity for them to actually just be able to take their time and communicate with someone who's willing to wait.
Yeah. Did we have somebody else who wanted to share? No. Before we go on, Pete, I just want to jump back to this powerful questioning piece because, you know, Melanie had put in there kind of right as we were transitioning. It took her a few years to learn the difference between open and closed questions, and then to learn the difference between leading and non-directive questions. Best advice I ever got was to keep the question short. And when I saw that comment, I realized that on my desk, I have a sheet of paper from the ICF toolbox that I keep. And it's called Oh, the Questions We Ask, the Core Competency as Powerful Questioning. And that's exactly what it does. It says, keep questions short and simple, do not issue commands and hope they land as questions. Ask secondary and tertiary questions, shift perspective, and number 5 is remain eternally curious. And they use the acronym KISS. KISS stands for Keep It Short and Simple. A powerful question evokes clarity, action, discovery, insight, or commitment. It creates greater possibility, new learning, or clearer vision. It does not need to be lengthy or complex to be effective. And then they have samples of questions, 2-word questions, 3-word questions, 4-word questions, 5-word questions, and 6-word questions. So
what is that from?
It's from the ICF toolbox. So I think it's just an article I pulled off there. If I can find it again when we send out the CCEUs, I can see if I can attach the link. We can attach the link. But I kind of just keep it on my desk, just kind of, you know, as a reminder.
Can I recommend a book, or are we not supposed to do that?
Go ahead.
Is that all right? So
Sure.
Coaching Questions by Tony, it's spelled STOLTZFUS, is fantastic.
I love that book. I love that book.
Yeah, fantastic.
That is a good one. Okay, thank you. Anybody else before we move on? Because I think, Pete, you're going into the next piece, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'm just going to take a quick scan. Okay, we look like we're good. All right, go for it.
So what is direct communication? How would you describe what direct communication is? Anyone? Going once?
Actually, I think direct communication is, and it was brought up before about that intuition part that I think Nancy was bringing up, but this is like communicating to your client an observation or a feeling, and then letting the client interpret it in terms of what you're saying, right? I'm directly sharing something with them that, you know, I'm noticing, and Robin talked about it too, that, you know, when I'm powerfully listening, I'm picking up all of these other cues too. And with direct communication, I'm putting it right to them what I'm kind of getting from this, and then letting them go from there, right?
Now, should we typically ask for permission, or?
Well, in my client, when client and I start setting up our agenda and how we're going to coach together, I always ask, do I have permission to share observations? And I'll also ask, do I have permission to intrude at times, right? Or to bottom line, or do some methods like that, that I explain to them what will be going on, so that they know what it is that I'm doing.
Well, the other aspect of this is also in ADHD coaching, there is, you know, if we want to talk about the brain, for instance, there is some didactic aspects to what we're doing versus if we were doing strictly life coaching for transition, let's say. So that adds another wrinkle to this. Comments?
Peter, Robin?
Yes.
Yeah, I love to teach. And I always, like Kat said, like to set that up in my new client intake session. That those sessions are a lot of non-directive questioning and tapping into their own understanding of themselves and what's going on. But occasionally I will teach things about ADHD to help them build understanding and awareness. So I set it up at the start on what a coaching session looks like. But again, I'm saying there is something I would love to share with you. Would that be okay? Or may I have your permission to show you a particular slide that teaches to an aspect of having ADHD?
Which I just had the thought that that's effective because it sort of you know, makes even more clear that this is about you, not me.
Right.
I just had that thought about permission, that
yeah,
it reminds them that, you know, this is your thing, not mine. That's why I'm asking permission.
Right. Yeah. And so I don't know how others like to do that. I would love to hear how others like to do that. I'm just someone who loves to teach. So I've set up my coaching that way, and trying to do it both ways, where I'm helping them learn and understand themselves, but also sticking to the coach approach of non-directive questions.
Yeah, it's a hard mix to do, actually.
Right.
And I feel the same way, Robin. Like I love to teach too, having been a teacher prior. You know, I love to share knowledge, but I am so thankful that I asked permission. This one instance just stands out so clearly in my mind. I had a client who was kind of struggling that one day, and I said, would some education about the ADHD brain be helpful right now? And she said, no, I'm not in a place where I can even hear that right this second. And so I'm so thankful that I paused, like I was, you know, kind of looking between the lines, and I asked that permission before I just jumped right in, because that's not what she needed in that moment. And then so I could meet her exactly where she needed to be.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah. Robin, did you want to add more to that?
Well, I was just, I was just going to chime in. Yeah, that's awesome. And there's a lot of situations where clients are in dire need to fix something that they're in big trouble with, like keeping their job, right? And or you know, other life-changing decisions they're getting ready to make, and how they're going to implement that, right?
Yeah. Right.
It's learning when to teach and when not to.
Yes.
throw that in to overwhelm them. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nancy, I know your hand is raised.
There. Okay, I unmuted. Yeah, the other thing, I think even in order to be able to do or have direct communication, there has to be a strong rapport, a strong, you know, like trust and intimacy established, you know, at a certain level. So I always kind of keep that in mind too. And and also kind of getting permission from the client on how they want to be directly communicated with, you know, especially an ADD client, if they talk a lot or if they ramble and if they want to be redirected or what have you, you know, you want to use their words or get permission from them up front in order to, you know, communicate directly on certain levels about certain things, especially around the ADD symptomology, if you want to be able to keep moving in the coaching session, you know.
Hey, Nancy, you said something in our last one that I found really interesting, that in the setup, you tell the client, what should I say and do if I can tell, now this was students, and it happens more often with them, if I can tell you are lying, which I felt was really interesting, but useful in other words, you asked, what should I do if that's happening?
Yeah. So, and that's one of the ways whenever I start out my coaching, I always want to, after I set everything up and, oh, everything's great, you know, then my next question is, okay, and what might go wrong and what can we do about it? You know, ahead of time. And so that's when I like to get their words and set up scenarios and everything, because then you kind of get that permission and then you can go back to that. Oh, remember you said that.
Hello.
Yeah, that person, is that my subconscious speaking? Hello. You know, then you can go back and use their words, or you can stop and say, is this an instance
Yes.
of blah 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 that we talked about during the intake? And then the person will say, oh my gosh, it is. And then say, okay, well,
never. In fact, I just sent a note to Christina about 2 days ago saying,
Sounds like, hold on, Nancy. Sounds like someone is not muted and they're talking on the phone or something. If they can mute themselves.
You're out.
Yeah, go ahead, Nancy.
Okay, yeah, I was having a hard time concentrating.
I know, I can tell.
Yeah. So yeah, and to me that's also you know, upholding the client's agenda. You know, so they go kind of hand in hand also. You know, how do you want to be communicated with? Where's your ADD symptomology going to come in? And
okay. Yeah,
so, okay, my mind has just kind of
wandered. Sorry, I can't, and I'm not able to mute. I can see where it's coming from. I'm just not able to mute them for some reason.
Oh, okay. Well, that's okay. I think I've thrown out a bunch of things.
Oh, that's great. That's
awesome.
great.
Thank you.
Well, I'm glad you called, man.
And who is that?
I'm sorry.
No, I can't. Yeah, it's not letting me mute.
Is it somebody that's on a phone?
No, I don't think so.
Too early in the morning, my meds haven't kicked in.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, oh, that reminded me, I need to call my doctor. No,
All right.
Okay. Should we go to the next slide? Did we find this person?
All right, go ahead.
Next slide.
Yep.
Okay, so here's the ICF PCC marker. I hate to show my ignorance. Where are these PCC markers? I'm not familiar with that whole concept.
They're on the ICF website. So the ICF has their core competencies listed, and then their PCC markers, which is what they're listening for.
What's PCC stand for?
That professional coaching level. Yeah,
Okay.
that the ACC.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, yes.
Yep.
Okay, got it. Okay, so we are looking at Coach, I'm just going to read here. Coach shares observations, intuitions, comments, thoughts, and feelings to serve the client's learning or forward movement. So just some comments on that as a marker, as something that would be useful to us. Thoughts on that? Seems like we hit some of this.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I hear some of the that kind of global listening, that kind of third level listening, really as they're adding, observations, intuitions, comments, they've got all these things going. And I think that's part of that active listening and that very globalized listening as you're sharing this stuff.
It's I went to a coaching school that was so big on the questioning that I find myself thinking back as far as direct communication. It was as little as possible was what the teaching was in the school I went to. So it is really interesting thinking about when to use it.
Absolutely.
And I see the what Nancy brought up, where you're using the client's language to reflect the client's way of speaking. I think number 2 is big too, because I'm intuitively, and if I'm really listening, active listening, and I'm sharing this, I don't have attachment to them being right. So I'm putting it out there, and the client always stands with the ability to disagree or agree or only take part of it. But if I get too much in my head as I'm thinking about this intuitive thing, the moments pass, right? If I'm too worried about, am I going to be right versus just putting it out there, miss the moment, right? You're going to miss it. So just don't have any attachment to being right.
Right. And I'm thinking we also should sort of ask, not even necessarily permission, but do you mind if I share an observation regarding what you just said, versus just, reacting and saying our own piece. Again, that lets the client know it's about them, I think.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
you could lead in with something like, I've just had this thought. Can I share it with you?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Looks like Ruth has put something down in the chat.
Well, and I think it's really interesting, the coach allows the client to complete speaking without interrupting. I mean, how many times do we just sit there and be like, oh, I know what I want to ask you, or I know what, that type of thing. And we have to kind of sit on our hands and put that pause button in, right? So that unless there, but then it goes on to say, unless there is a stated coaching purpose to do so. So I'm curious to know from other people, what would be like a coaching purpose for interrupting, a client when, they're speaking? Like, I'm just throwing that out to the group for a little discussion around that. Go ahead, Robin.
Yeah, what about when they start rambling on and on and on and on, or they start going down? They do that downward funnel thing where they're just digging themselves in deeper and becoming less and less motivated or more and more discouraged. So.
Yeah. That's what, yeah, I agree as well. It's just something to think about, right? And be always on that lookout, because we can sometimes get caught up in their story as well, you know, and pulling us out of that. And so we're the ones up here, you know, kind of with that global view. And when we see that our client isn't going in a healthy direction, you know, kind of, and
I like
putting
what
in.
Melanie put down about bottom lining, you know, those ways of those coaching skills that we have. Bottom lining is one of those.
Now, I remember that one from school. What is bottom lining? Sort of encapsulating what they're saying?
Yes, it's having clients get to the essence or the bottom line of what they're trying to say, versus getting into these long descriptive stories. And I remember, and you know, I've seen some coaches, I think maybe David's group, I can't remember, Barbara, I think Barbara even had like they had set up a cue between her and her client, that she could cue her client, and she would do something like this to say, to bottom line and get to that, you know, without being offensive, just to say, can we, because I'm standing for your hour of coaching and I don't want to waste your coaching time, right? So anyway.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, because they're typically into their emotional brain at that point. You got to get their PFC engaged. That's pretty cool to have a signal.
Yep.
Yeah.
And how important that is, right? To set it up up front, right? So, you know, when we're doing those intakes or those initial agreements and everything that we've talked about in the past on case collaborations, just how important it is to look at these markers. Like Melanie said, you know, one of her teachers recently gave a demonstration on how these markers are a gift to us as coaches. You know, and that's when then she went into asking the bottom line. But yeah, these are kind of gifts to us, and kind of clues of what we should be looking at in that original, you know, that first agreement that we make with our clients on how do we interrupt or bottom line them, you know, how do we point out when they're not serving themselves well, so that, you know, that's not even more negative on them.
We should probably move on to cats, I think,
Yeah,
right?
sorry.
Okay, so this is kind of just wrapping it up in terms of how we using this stuff now in our own direct communication and powerful questioning for our coaching. So the first question is, how do we share observations with our adults? So think about in your coaching sessions, how do you share these observations or this direct communication with your clients, your adult clients? Besides the things we brought up, obviously.
Yeah, yeah. This is a great spot for like, what does it really look like in everyday coaching?
This is Robin. I like to type up notes. And when my clients have an aha or something they've brought out as part of the coaching, I love to summarize that for them in their client note that they receive from me after coaching.
Okay. Very nice. Very nice.
Awesome.
Anybody else?
Do you see?
I have my name raised, but I don't know if people are watching that. But.
Oh, go for it.
Yeah. Very similar to what Robin said, I tend to not do notes for my clients, but for myself. I find myself sort of at the end of a session, summarizing some of those things and reminding them of, particularly of their successes that past week. I always feel like they leave in a nice mindset that even with all the challenges they've had, that I have observed in them, persistence and that things are improving, even if they may not be to the same degree they'd like. So I think that repeating kind of our perception of the bottom line or the main idea of the session is often really helpful.
Yep. And kind of asking them what their takeaway is, right? Like what landed with them because it's not always the same thing that necessarily that we necessarily got like a hit from. And I always find that so fascinating when they have something slightly different or very different than kind of what I would consider a takeaway from the coaching, but it's not about me. So it's, you know, like understanding, you know, what they are taking away from it, I think is a really interesting way to also kind of summarize a session.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I love about asking for takeaways. Sometimes my insecurity is that they'll say, I have nothing from this, sir.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's like, but it's a great question, obviously.
It is a great question. Yep. And Dale, I see your hand is raised, and then Kay.
Oh, just regarding taking notes. I do take notes. I ask permission, and then I try to summarize, and I'll ask the client if they'd like to take a photo of the notes that I took so that they know. So it's just clear and out in the open that I'm not writing things that they don't know about, that it's all about them.
That's awesome. Thank you, Dale. Kay, go ahead.
Well, this is just kind of a summary of what everyone else has said. I also take notes a lot of, and they understand that I'm doing that. And they understand that I'm doing it because of my working memory issues. And so at the end, I do ask for takeaway, which sometimes is kind of confusing to them. So I'll kind of more clearly define it, like, so what did you get from the session today? And as Christine said, they often come up with something really different from what I've seen. And so that gives me an opportunity to communicate that, oh, okay, you know, and write that down. That's what you took away. And then I might add a few things because of their working memory too. Oftentimes they've forgotten what we've talked about. And so that way we really come together in the end. And then I start the next session with that because I think we both could lose something in between. So
Nice.
Nice. Very nice. Thank you. Thank you. Robin, did you want to add?
Just real quick, because I know you want to go on to the next one. When I share notes, something to think about if you ever get into that position. I have a private client site, so I can share them securely. But if you include the notes in an email to them, asking permission to share those notes in an email and getting that as part of the agreement to cover yourself, just so nothing happens bad as a result of sharing notes through email. That's it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Kat, did you want to go on to the next one?
Yes. So let's consider the second question. How do we help adults consider new ways of thinking and doing things while still respecting their beliefs and values?
I love the idea of coming up with options, or let's go 3 or 4 ideas for this situation.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of brainstorming, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to add, powerful questions at this point should be kind of opening up for them some of these new ways of thinking and doing things too,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to afford some action or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yep. Ruth, did you want to add something?
Yes, I recently I found that sometimes when you want to do the classic brainstorming, there's a little bit of hesitancy because they're already judging each idea.
Mm-hmm.
With some people, I found it helpful. I'll say, okay, imagine another person, not you, but another person in your situation. What are all the things they could, they might not choose to, but they could do.
Yep.
And then they can kind of have fun with it because it's easier to state those things that they're adamantly not deciding to choose, but at least they're getting they're opening up the options and the possibilities. And I found it's much more interesting to me as a listener when they can come up with everything without prejudging everything.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Robin, go ahead.
Yeah, tagging along with Ruth, perspectives hunting is a favorite coaching tool that I love to use in my practice, because sometimes you have to get them out of their head and into somebody else's beliefs and values while still respecting theirs. And so I will have them name 3 to 5 people that they really admire, that they can really connect to and they respect. And then they'll write each of those names on a sheet of paper. The problem will be in the center, and the big sheets of paper of other people will be around the center. And then they'll stand on the sheet of the person they identified and look at their problem or challenge in the center and brainstorm what that person might think about a situation, believe about a situation, value about a situation.
Very nice. Neat. Very great. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Now, would you get the 3 to 5 people in the setup, Robin, at the beginning of your relationship, or just do that in the moment?
No, I would do that in the moment because coaching is in the moment, but I would just ask if they would like to do some perspectives hunting, and I would have them brainstorm. So
No, I just meant the 3 to 5 people. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, to brainstorm who they are. So that's why 3 is good enough. Even 2 is good enough, Peter. But if you can get 5, you know, that black and white thinking and flexibility with their thinking can kind of get, like Ruth said, out of their head and into somebody else's to see a different perspective.
Nice. Very nice. Yeah. Ruth, go ahead and
just real quick. I also have found occasionally that asking us when I'm doing well, not just face-to-face, but coaching, I might ask them to move, to get up from where they're sitting, to look out the window, to shift their own physical perspective. I've even I once asked a student to get under my desk and think about the issue from that perspective of being kind of having to crouch down under a desk. And it loosened up their thinking. And they thought it was fun too. So
that just reminded me of the movie Dead Poets Society when Robin Williams stands on the desk.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Kay, go ahead. Oops, you're muted, Kay.
We can't hear you, Kay.
I had to scroll back up to unmute. So anyway, this is on the same idea. I love that idea, and what Robin said about choosing other people, and then what Ruth said. If you ever are lucky enough to coach a couple, or once in a while a parent and a kid, my husband's taught me something called third-person perspective, and you do it that same way. You put the pieces of paper on the floor, and you have them be themselves, and then you have them be the other person, and then you have them be an objective observer. And they really get a lot of insight from that. And sometimes you've got to kind of coach them when they're being like, if a wife is angry with a husband, then when she's the husband, she'll be herself saying what he's doing wrong. So you keep coaching around, you're him now, you're him. What will he be saying or doing? So I haven't been able to use that very often, but I found it to be very effective when there's a conflict.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. I just want to honor, it's the top of the hour, so I just want to go quickly to the next slide. I know we didn't get to finish the last question, which I think is a good one, but I want to make sure that people get the closing words. Closing word. Today's closing word is information. 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 Just a reminder to send that with the opening word to CCEU at ADHDcoaches.org. And now that we're cleared to get all those CCEUs out, we will be doing that, and we'll be reissuing January's as well. I hope everyone can come back for May, managing progress and defining accountability with our clients, and for June, helping our clients create new awareness to achieve results. So with that, I want to just say thank you. Robin, did you want to give a last word?
No, just thank you. I have to go. So
Yes,
thank
I
you.
do too. I do too. I have another call coming in. So
Awesome.
I
Yes.
truly, truly appreciate everybody being there, and I appreciate everyone's patience with these CCEUs. I think we're back up and running, and you will all get them. And if I can find the link to that article, I will attach that to the CCEU certificate. So with that, I thank you, and we hope to see everybody back next time.
Thanks, Christine.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.